Hi, this is Summer, and I'm presenting on Mary Delany, a female artist in the 18th century. On this title card is one of her paper collage flowers, which is the artwork she is most well known for today. First, I'll set the scene for the social environment Delany created art in. During the 18th century, a growing number of people became interested in the field of natural sciences. However, this field, like other sciences, was largely reserved for males. Women's minds were seen as much more delicate and not suitable for thinking about complex scientific matters. Women were also equated to flowers, vulnerable and best used for reproduction and a pretty view. A last bit of context for Delany is that she belonged to the Blue Stocking Group, which was a society of women who sought to share educational information with each other through letters, creating their own female saloon. Here's my thesis. Delany's artwork was not rightfully celebrated in her time or by art historians, and her pieces should be re examined in a new light in order to better appreciate her contribution to the visual arts and the natural sciences. So now I'll dive into the different craft mediums Delany utilized and how they tie into natural sciences. Delany's first love in terms of collecting items was seashells. When she was only 17, she was married to a vastly older man due to financial struggles. It was a very unhappy marriage, and the beach became a welcome escape from her reality. She found joy in collecting shells and sought out rare shells for her collection, sometimes sourcing abroad through her many correspondents. As formal education about the classification and conservation of shells was not available to women, often books, and in Mary's case, the Blue Stocking Group, served as educational tools. Delany used her more common shells for decorating items around the house, like chandeliers and nooks. She also created shelled grottos, which were fashionable rooms filled with shells, often outside in gardens. The clothes people wore was the major way of displaying one's wealth in the 18th century. It was paramount to dress in a fashionable way in order to be well respected by society as a woman. Mantua-style dresses with wide hips and trains were popular at the time, and Delany sewed some of her own dresses in this style. On the right is a petticoat panel that she sewed and embroidered. Much like in her paper collages, the black satin background gives each flower a pop. Delany also desired to represent items naturally and honestly in her artwork. Here the flowers are meant to look like they've just been plucked and thrown across the fabric. For some of the larger flowers, they were embroidered separately and then sewed into the piece to create a 3D look. Delany was also an avid drawer and later on in life, a painter. Drawing was seen as a lower form of art and not as valued as painting. Less dynamic subject matters, like landscape and still life, were seen as suitable subjects for women who were not capable of representing complex subjects like history paintings. Because of this constricting environment, drawing played an important role in female art at the time. Women like Delany would create books of travels, landscapes important to them, or people they desired to capture. The book would be given as gifts or pulled out to reminisce. On this slide is one of Delany's drawings from a tiny pocketbook she took on a vacation. Like with her flowers, Delany desired to show people and landscapes in a naturalistic way. She actively chose not to beautify any aspects of the scene. Lastly, I will discuss the paper mosaics Delany created later in her life, starting at the age of 79. Similar to the needlepoint patterns she had created with paper for most of her life, Delany created the shapes of flowers with colorful paper. She added complexity by tearing some papers to add texture, as well as using watercolors to create slight shifts in color. When creating the collages, Delany would put up a black piece of paper behind the flower specimen she was copying. The flower would then be lit from the front, creating an even lighting and deep shadows. On the right is the first ever flower Delany created. As you can see on the next slide, Delany's advanced her skills greatly over the nearly 1,000 collages she created. This artwork actually includes a real petal and piece of a flower stalk seen on the bottom right side. Unlike the petal, the paper has not lost its bright color. Delany was very organized in how she approached the craft. Her main objective was to accurately show how the flower grew, along with the leaves and buds. She also organized each collage by alphabetical order and labeled them with the Latin and common name. She wrote in letters about the thrill that getting to look at the beauty of flowers instilled in her. She also, as a Protestant, was very motivated to create flowers out of her love for God and His creation. And here's a bibliography with all my sources. Thank you for listening.